Okay, the Hangout on Air is live, and this is a very, very special vJUG, as we have, first of all, the content was donated very kindly by Oracle and Google for us to have this session. Secondly, this is our first panel that we're having on the vJUG. And secondly, we're actually giving our new vJUG site a test. So if you are viewing this from the traditional YouTube site, you can go to http://test.virtualjug.com, and from there you can see a site which hosts a whole bunch. In fact, why don't I share my screen and I can show you what that looks like, just to show you for future. Screen share. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen now. If I bring this down. Okay, so this is the new vJUG site. So from here you can see. Interesting. This session starts today. Let me. Oliver, I'll pass over to you while I update the site. You can give a quick intro.
All right. Thanks very much for that, Simon. I love having things dropped in my lap. Hey, folks. This is Oliver here. I'm not in control of any of the presentations. But while Simon rescues the maiden voyage of our testing vJUG website, I guess a good place to start is just to run through and introduce everybody. So I see Bruno as far over on my left as possible, so let's start with him. Hi, Bruno.
Hi, Oliver. Hi, Simon. Hi, everyone. First of all, thanks for the great opportunity to be here. I think this is a very important subject for us to discuss in the Java community, and it's a pleasure to be with such a great host of great set of panelists. Thanks a lot. And I'm Bruno Souza. I'm known as the Brazilian Java man. I have been working with Java since 1995. I was the first individual to join the JCP, and I'm now the representative of SoJava. That was the first Java user to join the JCP, and together with the London Java community, we were elected to the JCP Executive Committee a couple of years ago. So I have been I participate a lot on discussion about standards of Java in the past, even before the JCP existed. I participate in the discussion about the open sourcing of Java. So I'm very, very interested in the situation that's going on right now.
So long story short, you've been involved with Java basically at every angle along the way for the last 100 years, and it's great to have you here. Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bruno.
Thanks.
Next is Hildeberto Mendonça.
Hi. Yeah,
hey, Hildeberto.
My name is that complicated. Yeah. So I'm a former vJUG leader, and I'm currently advisor. So I have been working with Java since 1998, and as JUG leader since 2002, so it's 12 years so far.
All right.
I'm very active in the community, so I participate a lot, I discuss a lot, and I usually have a critical view of the discussion, so I'm going to contribute with my position. So I'm really excited to see what's going on in the view of each one, and what will be the output of it, and let's see if we can contribute and have a great result. And I really hope that Oracle and Google listen to it and make some decisions, coherent decisions, and maybe we can evolve and be productive instead of fighting. Okay.
All right. That's a good sentiment. I hope that we can deliver something valuable out of this too. And if anyone in power listens to it, even sweeter. This is to you folks, you people in power. Listen up. We're gonna give you the real opinions here. Moving on to Mr. Lukas Eder. How are you, sir? You are muted.
I'm great, thanks. How are you, Oliver?
It's going very very well. It's going very well. I'm doing this from home, and I have my familiar surroundings, so everything's cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's still in the office where I work, and from my person, I'm the head of R&D at Data Geekery. So we sell vJUG, which is a large API to model SQL as an internal domain-specific language directly in Java. We suspect that after this ruling, we might be infringing Link from Microsoft. So let's see how this turns out. Let's hope not. I agree with Hilberto here on his previous argument. In the end of the day, we engineers really want to just get stuff done, and this ruling is going to be very interesting if to see if it affects us or not.
Yeah.
All right, so maybe a bit about my headline. I'm also providing the free as in beer perspective, so maybe that's a different point of view for some of you guys who are more on the free as in freedom line and this whole open source discussion.
Ah, okay. So we've got a ninja editorialist in our midst. Mr. Martijn Verburg, also known as the diabolical developer, who, although he wears cool hats all the time, actually has a really great head of hair. So he's not hiding anything. Martijn.
Thanks, Oliver. Hi, everyone. I help run the London Java community. We have a seat on the Java standards body, and we're really here to help, tell the powers that be what engineers think about these current decisions. I'm also hopefully here to try and add a little bit of realism to the whole thing. Let's not all panic, people. It's really not as bad as everyone's making it out to be. So I think everyone can take a nice relaxing drink and enjoy the discussion, but nothing to panic yet.
All right. Well, that's I feel a little bit safer. I had that drink already, so I'm feeling relaxed. Thank you, Martin. Michael Rice. I have never been able to meet you face to face or screen to screen, and I'm happy to do so now. So tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Oliver. So I have not had my first drink. It's only 10 o'clock, and I'm out here in California. So I haven't met very many people, and this is actually, I think, the first time I've really participated in your group. So I'm very grateful to be here. You guys are pretty impressive. So I'll try to live up to it. I'm mostly a longtime developer. I've been a Java developer since, applets were cool and Notepad was the IDE of choice. I kind of bounced around. I worked for Accenture for a while. Now I'm a consultant with Red Hat, and on the side, I'm also a lawyer. I'm actually a licensed lawyer here in California and in Washington State, so I can hopefully do a little translation between the legal aspects of all this and the and the crazy engineering stuff you guys do. So happy to be here. Of course, I got to give you my usual disclaimers. I think it's on the slide, but I'm obviously not speaking for Red Hat, and anything I say isn't really legal advice, right? So thank you.
I just was recording that, writing that in stone.
Good.
So,
Good. Thank you.
We're not going to have any problems. Well, it's very cool to have the legal perspective represented here too, because I think none of us really know what we're talking about in that regard. So great to have you, Michael. Guys, I'm going to hand it back over to Simon. He has hacked the Unhackable, which was a testing website anyway. So thanks very much for introducing yourselves. I'm going to go start doing what I do best, which is write stuff down.
Awesome. Thank you, Oliver, and thank you for bailing me out there. Thanks for the introductions, guys. That was awesome. Yeah, it's a new site. We're always going to have teething problems, right? So this is the new site. I'll just show you through. If you scroll down, you can see the live session here. Please click play there. Otherwise, you're just going to sit here in front of a screen watching IRC, and you can log into IRC on the right-hand side. Also, just below, you can see the live scrolling Twitter, anything that mentions at vJUG will get tweeted. Will get seen in this stream. And you can also click on this button, which will allow you to tweet much easier directly to the hashtag vJUG, which is what we're using. Through the site, we've also got our sponsor, and you can view all our previous sessions directly through the site as well. And this site is going to hopefully, so long as the testing today goes well, replace the main site. So just going back to this then, we've talked through the new site, and just a very quick disclaimer, and this is for everyone on the call, I'm sure. Apart from Michael, who just said he's a part-time lawyer, the IANAL, I am not a lawyer, pretty much is for everyone. The vJUG is a personal jug and not associated with any company or entity. All views given on this entire panel or people from the audience do not reflect the views of the vJUG, anyone's employers, or any other body. So basically what we're saying here is this is just a discussion. This is just trying to understand, remove any fear, uncertainty, and doubts, and just try and understand what this truly means to a Java developer in that sense. I'll give a very, very brief history. Google used Java in Android mobile OS many, many years ago. In 2010, Oracle sued Google for violating patents and also copywriting material from the Java platform. In 2012, the court ruled that Google did not violate these patents, so Oracle appealed. And just recently, earlier this month, in May 2014, the US Court of Appeals ruled that Oracle can indeed copyright APIs, and this is where we're going to be starting from. Reactions to that, the Google spokesperson said that they are disappointed by this ruling, which sets a damaging precedent for computer science and software development, and are currently considering their options. There is an option for Google to appeal themselves, but I'm not sure if that would actually even go through. I think once this appeals court have made their decision, I think that decision is final. Another reaction is from a professor here from Santa Clara University of School of Law. Programmers should still craft interoperable programs if the opinion stands, but lawyers will have some more involved sign-off of what is permissible. So, you know, it's potential that we might see lawyers involved more in the development process today. So we've talked about the vJUG panel. We've already gone through them. There's another disclaimer. It's that important. And I'm just going to moderate, so I will be posing questions from IRC directly to the panel. So those who are watching, please ask your questions, have your discussions in IRC, and I'll forward that directly to the panel. So at this stage, I'm actually going to hand over to Bruno to give us a little bit more in depth of what his understanding of the situation is and what the first implications are going to be of this court ruling. So Bruno.
Okay, Simon. Before I start, can you just go back to your slide where you have the history?
Sure.
Okay, I just want to clarify one point, and I'll start from there. Okay, so you know, on your third bullet, you say that the court rules Google did not violate patents. To Oracle appeals. That means, you know, that sounds like Oracle appeals on that non-violation of patents. But actually, what the court judged at that point was that Oracle did not violate patents, and then that Google did use copyrighted material. But then the court agreed that the APIs that Google are using were not copyrightable. So that was what the ruling was all about. And then what happened this past couple of weeks was that the appeals court declared that you know, the APIs, the Java APIs, are indeed copyrightable, and so so the court is coming back to the appeals court to decide, you know, if what Google did is fair use or not. So that's basically where we are. So I don't think at this point in time there is any discussion about the patents anymore, and the discussion is mostly about you know, the copyrights of the APIs. And you know, it's very good to have a lawyer in the house. So you know, he might give us a lot of better insight what's going on. But that said, I think that it's very, very worthwhile for everyone to read the rulings, because it has so much to do with what we do. You know, so much to do with Java and our APIs, and that it's fairly readable. I mean, it's, you know, sometimes you may get bogged down a little bit with the reference to other legal cases and things like that. But in general, it's very, very readable, and I think that it's very reasonable, and you're gonna give you a lot of insight what's actually going on. So try not. So the first thing I wanted to say. There's two first thing I wanted to say. One is an article by Simon Phipps where he talks about corporations being hepatiles. I think that's very worthwhile to read and always to keep in mind. And when we're discussing this situation, we're joking here before you started about which side we were on, and actually I think we need to understand that both Oracle and Google are on this for commercial purposes. There is a whole lot of ways that those two companies could discuss and agree in commercial terms, and for whatever reasons they decided, or they decided not to agree on commercial terms in the past, and that's how the discussion is going on in the courts right now. So as Java developers, I think we have to understand that a lot of this, of course, it affects us in some ways because we're using this both technologies in a lot of cases. And I think we need to understand what's going on, but I don't think there are good guys on this discussion, right? I think that there's two corporations that are in disagreement of a commercial discussion that happened in the past, and I think that in a lot of ways what we have to do is wait for the justice decide what's going on. My hope, since this whole thing started, was that at some point, during the justice process, there would be some agreement. People would actually sit down and agree and solve their issues in a better way. And instead of leaving the results to this, because basically what's going on is that instead of two corporations that understand what they're trying to do, instead of they agreeing to each other what they want to do, they're relying on a set of judges and jury people that many times don't really understand all the details and all the nuances that's going on, and so is this group of people that are actually gonna find out, get to a solution in the end. And I think this is my opinion is that this is basically leaving to chance the results of all of that. So I would really prefer that those two corporations would sit down and agreed on a reasonable solution that would benefit both of them and also all of us as developers. But since that's not going on right now, I think that we have to understand what the justice is thinking about it. And so that's one thing I really think that everyone should read, the Corporations Are Reptiles blog post from Simon Phipps. The other thing is that on the Java Champions mailing list, one of the persons that comments on these discussions was Geir Magnussen. And although I'm not going to quote exactly what he said because the Champions mailing list is the private mailing list, but I'll paraphrase because Geir has been Geir was one of the vice president of Apache Foundation, and he was the person responsible for creating the Harmony project many years ago, and I had many discussions with Geir. He represented Apache on the JCP, and one of the things that he said in the on the Champions mailing list is that basically as developers, right, we should be looking for implementations that are compatible, right? That we really should not be encouraging companies to create and specification or implementations that are incompatible with the JCP specification. There is a reason why he said that, and actually, if you see all the history of Apache related to Java and all the implementation of this that Apache did, it's compatibility is what binds our community together. I think that the reason why we have such a large ecosystem, the reason why all of us can create applications, and there is a strong competition in the market, is because there is compatibility. And I understand that in lots of times compatibility goes in a different direction than open source, for example. But Apache has shown that there is a lot of different ways that we can put compatibility and open source on the right side together. I think the OpenJDK project is also showing that there is a way to do that. But I think that it's very, very important that we understand that we are all based on compatibility. And from that, the reason why I'm saying this is that because if you get on the ruling itself, I think since I already did a little bit of history, I'm not going to detail a lot of the history, but on this last ruling, basically the judge has decided that that Java APIs are indeed have indeed the benefit of copyright. And what this basically means is that no, the judge did not decide that APIs in general have protections to copyright. I think that's what a lot of people are thinking. No, that's not what the judge said. There is a specific discussion going on. Basically, the main point that this decision is talking about is what we call the SSO. Actually, not we call, but what the legal system calls the SSO. The structure, sequencing, and organization of the API. So basically, when Google implemented Android, they used the APIs, and a lot of people say that they use the APIs from Harmony. I'm not sure how accurate this is, but basically they use the existing APIs for the Java specification. And there was a reason for that, of course. There's a commercial reason for that. That they wanted to allow Java developers to code for the Android ecosystem. That's a very, very valid reason, I think. Right? I think that's once me as a Java developer I can code to a new platform, I think that is a very valid reason. I think we all want more and more implementations of the Java specs. And so I think this is a good thing. On the other hand, when Google did that, they of course implemented in a way that prevented any Java applications, any existing Java application to actually run on this new platform. So I think they broke compatibility in lots of different ways, and I think that is a bad thing, right? I think that compatibility. That's why I mentioned compatibility in the beginning, because I think compatibility is a hallmark of our community, and I think that's an important thing to consider. Now, the ruling goes to say that this happens before Oracle. It happens during the Sun time, and the judge says that Sun and Google discussed ways to actually include Java in Android, and they never reach an agreement. I don't know exactly what they never reached an agreement is all about, but basically from the ruling itself, it says that Sun disagreed that Sun disagreed with Google because Google did not want to follow the compatibility rules, and Sun did not agree to that. There's some other corridor comments that says that there's different things going on. We have to understand that Sun was going through an acquisition process at that time, so maybe there's other things going on. But in terms of what the justice said, and I think all of the legal documents and everything, that's basically they didn't agree on the compatibility thing. That is an important point, because if for all of us Java developers, compatibility is important. And if Google wanted to have Java developers being able to apply and to develop to Android, maybe that should be a consideration that Google should take from the beginning. But I also understand that there's commercial issues here, right? So probably Sun was asking for some royalties, or Sun was not allowing Google to have an open source version of Java on Android. I'm not sure exactly the commercial parts of it, but so maybe there's lots of other things, and maybe Sun took the wrong approach. I don't know, right? But whatever case, they didn't get to agreement at that point, and Google went forward and implemented Android with all the Java compatibility. Well, I mean, I'm sorry, not with Java compatibility, but using all of the Java APIs. So Oracle disagreed with that and sued Google. and allegedly Oracle says that they want Google to have a compatible implementation. I also, on that side, I also think that's a worthwhile goal. I think that if whatever conversation that Oracle have with Google, if the goal is to get a compatible implementation, I think that's a very worthwhile goal, right? I'm not sure if going to the justice is the best way. As I said before, it's a pity that this whole thing is left to chance, to a judge view of the market. But I think that having a compatible implementation of Java in some way, right, it's an interesting thing. Now, going back to the ruling, another thing the ruling says is that Oracle identifies 3 ways for Google to have legal access to the APIs. And I think that we all understand what those 3 ways, and I'll just kind of mention them here. One is to license the source code, right? That's what a lot of device manufacturers and a lot of VM vendors did, is license Oracle source code. And license the Oracle source code means that you can do anything you want with the source code, with whatever agreement you have. So Google could have licensed it from Oracle, and on the licensing schema decide to, not be compatible, for example. That could be a very valid goal. There's lots of devices out there that use the Java source code and are not compatible, but people are paying for this right. The problem with that is probably because Oracle and Sun before, we want royalties. I mean, we want, you have to pay by each device to actually have access to that source code. So maybe that's not valid for Google. Maybe didn't allow Google to open source Dalvik or something like that. I don't know. But that's one way of license. The other way of license is to use the specification, right? So a lot of us here are involved with the JCP somehow. The JCP specifications are you have the right to implement the JCP specifications from scratch. It's a clean room implementation. So Google did do a clean room implementation of Java. So no one is saying that Google copied the Java source code, but so Google did implement from scratch, and that's what JCP is promotes, right? That you can implement the specification from scratch, but with a caveat, right? If you implement the specification from scratch, you have the rights through the implementation, the copyright of the implementation, and you have the rights to the specification, to the copyrights and the patents, including the specification, if you are compatible, if your final implementation passes through the TCK. The TCK is not royalties. The rules of the GCP, if you implement a spec based on the JCP specifications, you may have to pay a one-time fee to run the test, the TCKs, and if you're non-profits, you don't have to pay that. But it means that you pay one time and you're free to use implementation as much as you want. But you are compatible, right? You're passing the TCK. That's the second option. The third option that you could use the Java source code is actually get the source code exists. OpenJDK, it's an open source project. There's a license to it, the GPL license, and you can get the OpenJDK source code and do whatever you want with it. There's no requirements that you need to be compatible. There's no requirements that you need to what you need to do. The GPL allows you to do anything you want with that source code, but it has to follow the rules of the GPL, right? So the rules of the GPL basically say that if you link your code with other code, your whole code has to be GPL, etc. I think all of us know about that. And that probably means that if Google did include OpenJDK code inside Android, it probably would mean that the whole Android system would eventually have to be licensed under the GPL. And we can now understand why Google did not want to do that, right? Because it probably would prevent Google from doing a lot of the things that they're doing in terms of commercials. So it's understandable that Oracle wants their intellectual property, or whatever how you call it, and want to make money out of that. It's also understandable that Google wants to make money out of the Android ecosystem, right? I think we Java developers, we're kind of stuck in the middle because we now have we can now use all of the Java, a lot of the Java ecosystem to run applications for Android, but we don't get the benefit of Android being compatible. We don't even get the benefit to actually everyone to say that Android is Java, right? So, basically, as a Java user group leader, we basically have things like, Android user groups that says that they're not related to Java, right? And we also have Java user groups that don't want to run Android talks because Android's not Java. So that's it's bad. I think this whole situation is bad for all of us. Now, just to finalize, there's a couple things that I would like to say here. I'm trying to be very neutral here. I'm not trying to push to either side, but I think there's one important thing that I want to mention here because it touches on the compatibility side. Is that on the ruling, Google says that they use it all of those Java classes and method names and declarations as an essential means to achieve interoperability with Java. I'm reading from the ruling itself, and so now the ruling continues to say that giving the record evidence that Google designed Android so it would not be compatible with the Java platform. That's a whole discussion to begin with, right? We find Google's interoperability argument confusing. So then it goes on to say that that Google did not show any predated or post-dated Android application, Java application that could run on the Android platform. So so the ruling saying that the compatibility Google sought to foster was not with Oracle's Java platform or with the JVM central to that platform. Instead, Google wanted to capitalize on the fact that software developers were already trained and experienced in using the Java APIs package. So the district court agreed, finding that to 37 Java API packages, Google believed the Java application programmers would want to find the same 37 sets of functionality in the new Android systems, and so that's why they use it, the same specification. So I think that there is an important thing here. So Google is doing this to allow us to run on Android, and I think that we want to run on Android, but but more than run on Android, we want our applications to be compatible and to run on Android and run out of Android, right? I don't think that the whole reason for why we created and why we invest and why we participate, why we share our time to the Java ecosystem is because we want to be to run only on Android or only on Oracle. I think we all want to run everywhere. That's why compatibility is so important. So I think that's, just to finish, I think that it is, the ruling is very, very readable, and I think you all should read because it gives a lot of insights on what's going on really on. Okay, I spoke a lot more than I had my time, so sorry.
No, that's awesome. That's a really good intro for us to base this panel off now. Thank you very much, Bruno. So there's a few questions out already. For anyone else who is thinking about asking a question, please do so in IRC, and we'll push them across to the panel. Let me go through a few of the questions. So Flatore has asked if there's any repercussion for the OpenJDK. Red Lab is having a few beers in a cafe. AFLJ is giving an opinion that it's just speculation that Google wanted compatibility. He doesn't believe that Google wanted to bother writing a library for an entire platform, so took Harmony. Sorry, No More Remorse agrees with that. And Lou says that the business of copywriting APIs is a slippery slope regardless of the scope. So Martijn, let me throw that over to you, and also you can comment on some of the things that Bruno's been talking about. What's the repercussion for OpenJDK, if there is one, and also wider and beyond that, what's the repercussion for for people who are writing any project in any language. This is going beyond Java, right?
So Simon, sorry, Mark. Can I just quickly comment on the speculation part? Is that the whole thing about the compatibility? It's it's what Google says on their appeals, for example. Google specifically says that they wanted that to achieve a degree of interoperability with Java. So it's not no one's talking about Google wanting compatibility. They wanted interoperability.
Okay, cheers, Bruno. Martijn?
So for OpenJDK itself, I don't think there's any impact at all, even if this ruling was upheld. The OpenJDK source code base has been very carefully scrubbed of any sort of intellectual property rights, copyrights, infringements. So I dare say OpenJDK itself is an extremely clean code base. So I don't think there's any danger that Java itself will be affected. It's the applications we build on top, and it's the applications that other people build in other languages, which seek some sort of interoperability layer with, for example, writing something which can interop with the Microsoft Windows API. All of a sudden, you've got a compatibility layer inside your code which matches Microsoft's APIs. Are you now in violation of copyright? Can Microsoft, for example, come along and sue you? And that's why so many people who haven't read very carefully into this ruling have started to panic on the internet, and that's where the sort of fear, uncertainty, and doubt is. I think one of the other panelists mentioned that there was a concern for his company because they have a compatibility layer, and it could be a very real concern because of the loose nature especially of what the term fair use means under US law. But I'll quickly add that don't forget this is only under US law. It doesn't. This ruling doesn't govern South America, Europe, Asia, etc. The ruling means that it's had to go back down to the lower courts for a jury ruling. So we haven't even gone back all the way up with all the appeals process to the Supreme Court. It'll be years before we see a truly final decision which is actually enacted out in US law, and I'll reiterate that US law only. So this is why I say don't panic, everyone. It's a long way from being done yet.
So that's a really good point. Thanks, Martijn. Michael, from the legal perspective, as a consultant lawyer, what's your take on the fact that this is a US court ruling, and currently only I guess companies who are in the jurisdiction of the US courts are going to be affected by this initially. In terms of outlooks of the rest of the world having to endure these rulings, what's our outlook on that?
Well, it's an interesting question. Let me set the context a little bit. The case came out of California, the Northern District of California, which is where San Francisco is, right? That was where the district court case. That's where Google initially won. Then it went to. Gets very confusing. The Northern District Court is in what's called the Ninth Circuit. So American courts, federal courts, are broken up into, oh my God, I can't remember. It's either 10 or 11 circuits, 12. It's pretty embarrassing. I can't remember exactly how many. But here in California, we're in the Ninth Circuit. This case actually went to a court called the Court of Federal. It's in D.C. and the court normally rules on intellectual property rights issues involving patents, not necessarily copyright. So the Ninth Circuit has the final rule on copyright in the Ninth Circuit. And the states that are covered by the Ninth Circuit are like California, Washington, Oregon, most of the western states you've ever heard of. It's not necessarily the law of the entire United States. So that makes it even more nuanced and more complicated than you might have initially thought. That said, of course, a lot of big tech companies are based in California, so it's going to be influential, right? And a lot of the big industrialized countries follow an intellectual property regime that's pretty similar. There's a lot of very interesting differences, but the only thing I'm really well versed in would be California intellectual property issues, or Washington, or American systems. I think that first of all, I thought it was really interesting how he wanted to clarify your point. It sounded like a true lawyer to me right off the bat. That sounded pretty good. one of the things that I think is really important to think about with this case is that compatibility is definitely one of the big issues, I think, for the community, but was not necessarily the key issue for the court. The court in this case was more concerned about, let me take a step back. During the district court case, the trial where they had a jury and a judge, they had initially, the judge decided he was going to decide whether the Oracle code, right, the Sun Oracle code, was copyrightable at all. And then he also gave to the jury the question of whether they had a fair use to copy the code, even if it was copyrightable. So the point that I'm going to make is that this is far from over. This is it went to an appeals court. It has not reached the Supreme Court. I'm not sure it ever will. But what happened was that the appeals court said, we're going to overturn the judge's decision that the judge made a kind of sweeping decision that Oracle's APIs or Sun's APIs were not copyrightable at all because of things like interoperability. That was what they said. The appeals court disagreed with that notion, saying, no, it is copyrightable because of Google could have implemented its own API, right? That's what they're saying. So like something like, and if you look at, there's a footnote too, and as Bruno said, I highly recommend you actually read the case. It's very long, it might be kind of painful in some spots, it does get bogged down in some technical details, but I think if nothing else, it will inspire a fair amount of confidence in you that these judges actually do get the issue. And this is actually a court that deals with intellectual property issues. So a job in analyzing it, and I think you'll be fairly impressed, you'll feel more comfortable. I know it's always scary to trust somebody who's not a developer to deal with these issues, but they had great lawyers on both sides. It's very well reasoned. It's pretty well done. So the point was that they said, no, the code is copyrightable, and we can get into the details of that. But what we're going to remand, which means we're going to have a new trial on the issue of whether it's fair use. Now, to me, as a Java developer, I think, so if I was going to, I mean, obviously Google, I don't know how concerned they were about actually making, like, living up to the right once, run everywhere paradigm. What they did want to do, and what I think the court rightly figured out, was that they wanted to say, look, there's this huge base of Java developers out there. Why not capitalize on them? Why not get them writing code for Android? And to do that, we're going to make the ergonomics of the language as comfortable as possible for them. So we're not going to create like a new Java lang object. And that's kind of what I keep thinking of. I keep thinking of Java lang object is if you were going to write a Java language from the ground up without the Java packages, without those 37 core packages, how would you do it? And I think that Google, I think that was one of Google's main concerns, is they said, well, let's not completely reinvent the wheel. Let's just implement all these APIs. And it's true in they definitely wrote their own implementations. Everybody agreed with that in the trial and at the appeals level. The issue is that they copied the API. So I think in going back to interoperability, I think the issue is not so much for people, if this makes people feel a little more comfortable with using APIs. I don't think, nobody questioned their right to use the APIs. If they had, like, say, implemented if they had managed to obtain a license from Oracle to run the virtual machine on Android, they could have just written however much code all they wanted to make it work. The issue was that they took those APIs and wrote their own implementation of it. And that is what I think is at issue here, not just with Java, but any language. So if you're going to go write a new implementation of the Java language from the ground up, like Google did, you have to do it under a license. And as my understanding is, there's 3 licenses they could have pursued. It's the GPL, which I assume OpenJDK is. I'm not sure what it is. Or they have a second license. I forget what it is now, but it's in the opinion. And then obviously they offer a commercial license. And in this case, Google failed to obtain any of those licenses, and that's what triggered the litigation. So I'll hand it back to you. I kind of meandered off topic, but
okay, no,
can I just comment one thing that you said that I think is very important? You basically the courts did agree that Google could have, Google used the Java language, and that's okay, right? The courts did agree that there's 3 packages they are necessary to use the Java, to use the Java language. And Java Lang object, for example, is Java Lang is one of those packages. So if Google had used those three packages to implement the Java language and then written a whole API specifically for Android, then this case would not exist. The case exists because there are 30-something packages that implement more than what you need for the Java language. They implement a lot of functionality that Java developers use, and that Google decided to use the same structure for that functionality to let Java developers be very comfortable.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And so, I mean, I think that so when I said that this is far from over, I think the really key thing here is that, let's say, so fair use is a very complicated doctrine, but it basically says even though I have a copyright, I get to pay the copyright owner, the intellectual property holder, anything if I can find this fair use. It's called a defense. So you can raise a defense and say I don't have to pay you anything because it's fair use. I think they have a very strong argument that at least as to you're right, there were the three core packages. It was Java Lang, Java IO, and I have it here somewhere. But in order to actually make an implementation of the language, you almost have to, right? I don't even know how you would make an implementation of Java without the Java Lang object. You'd have to invent this whole new. I'm not even sure how I would go about doing it. But I think they have a very strong argument on fair use as to that. And so that's what I mean by it being far from over. They're going to go have a trial, assuming they don't settle this issue before it goes to trial. They'll have a trial in front of a new jury that will have to decide whether it was fair use or not, which the losing party will most likely want to then appeal, right? So we'll end up right back here again in another year or two or four. So it's far from over, but I think for now, I think the key takeaway is it's okay if you're using APIs, and like I said, this is not legal advice. Don't rely on what I'm saying, but I think the key takeaway is consumers of APIs are okay. It's as if you're going to write a new implementation of and copy the exact method signatures line. And you don't have to hit Control C, Control V. If you're just typing it out, looking at it from one side to the other, that could be a very big problem right now.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to bring Hildeberto in now. Hildeberto, you described yourself as a developer who just wants to get stuff done, which is a great description for any developer, I guess. So as a developer who just wants to get stuff done, do you see any obstacles now, having listened to what's been said so far about you just getting stuff done, or do you consider that you might need any legal advice from your company or anything like that before getting stuff done?
Thank you. Well, I'd like to start saying that as a Java developer, using the Oracle JDK, the Open JDK, I'm completely relaxed. I have no concern. I have no legal concerns because I'm not in USA. I'm in Europe, and if I were in USA, it would be also relaxed. So my concern is not about the OpenJDK or the license or the use of the Java platform. I'd like to comment on the idea of compatibility or interoperability aspect. It's important to mention that what you write for mobile is different from what you write for desktops and servers. That are totally different kinds of application. They probably will share some business logic, something like that, but in terms of use of the platform, they are different. So when you write a mobile application, you are actually rewriting a lot of code from your apps. So the thing is, even if you try to reuse something from your current code base, even if you try some compatibility whatsoever, you have to compile the code again because you have a lot of libraries, you have a lot of other components that are specific for devices. That's why Java Standard Edition is different from Java Mobile Edition, Micro Edition. So mobile really enforce the need for some specific features. So when we say compatibility, interoperability, that's not really a strong argument, because we actually have to rewrite a lot of things to adapt the application to a mobile device. Let's imagine that Android is actually a computer. It's a Linux operating system. However, the user interaction, the space available to present information and to construct the user interface is completely different from servers and desktop. So it's a new way, it's a new platform, different way to code. So maybe you cannot actually run the Java code, but you can actually compile existing code. So from this point of view, I think it's not a big concern for Java developers. They can actually reuse what they have in the Android platform, but they have to compile, because they also are forced to compile because they have to use other APIs specific for the platform. So that's not a strong point for me. So I believe that Google was silly, was lazy when they decided to not rewrite the API. This point I agree, because it's not a big deal to rewrite some APIs. At least not the implementation, but redefine the API, redefine your interfaces. That's the point, which is the current problem. So it's silly that Google didn't have time to rewrite the things, because the language is the knowledge. So we easily understand how to write Java code. But the IDE, it's something that's easy to capture, to observe. So it's not a big deal to use the language, but then change the API. That's one point. So I think, as Michael said, if the focus, the scope is now the API, then I think it's yes, Google was lazy. Google could do it in another way. But let's stop for a minute and then discuss about the fair use. Fair use, I'm not, of course, a lawyer. I don't understand the small details of it. But I'm actually believe that if you have a book and you have an index, you have a table of content. The table of content sounds like the API, because the content of the book, the rest of the book, is actually the implementation of the table of content. Let's use this abstraction to understand. So if you write a new book with the same table of content, but a completely different implementation, you rewrite everything, even with a totally different story. Would that be a legal issue? Let's say, would the original author, complain about the copy of the table of content? I think that's the situation that doesn't worth a lot of discussions, a lot of billions and billions of business lost because of this small issue. So Oracle is issuing Google because of a small API that most of Java developers understand and use. However, it's a really small thing to fight about. I think it's really small. So I think they are wasting time. They would be better to find an agreement to move further. Because if we stop a little bit, you will understand the impact for the community is huge. It's not just, I'm using the Oracle JDK or OpenJDK, I'm relaxed, but wait a minute. Look at all the conference with Java 1, for instance, there is no Google talk Java 1. It used to be at the time of Sun. Google is out of Java conferences. But when you go to DevOps, they are all sold out. Google conference are all sold out. So they fill out the conference with lots of developers. They are all passionate about Google technology. Why we cannot do the same with Java, purely Java? So why we cannot sold out Java 1? The thing is, slowly, the image of Java, the interoperability aspect, it's important, but more important is the image that the company, Oracle in the case, is giving to the community. The image that Java is something to use and profit and get money and develop nice applications, solve great problems, but not a technology to fight. I believe that many companies are getting a lot of money with Java without any, let's say, more than what Google actually are doing specifically with Java. Google considers the whole environment to win money, selling applications, selling advertising, and so on. But to finalize my point, I would like to say that the impact is huge because developers, we don't know what Google is going to do. What will be the consequence if the Supreme Court do something about this? What is the decision Google will take? Are they going to replace the Java language? It's not Java, but in practice it's Java. Are they going to use another language? So C, one more time, if they decide to go in another direction, all Java developers are losing. They are losing it. They have to learn another language. They have to rewrite the application. It's a huge impact. So we hope that Google should avoid such a kind of impact in the community. Try to talk to Oracle to find a nice deal to avoid that everybody should be right or something like that. So we want to that Android evolves in a direction to Java 7, Java 8, but still we don't want to suffer because the thing about Android is that we write, simple people, everybody can write your application and can profit from this application. So it's good for the economy. You see, so it's valid. It's very important. I think developers should be really worried about this point because I really hope that Google doesn't change too much and find a deal with Oracle to avoid a huge impact. So
and that's an interesting point because it potentially means that the thing that is going to change is potentially the landscape based on corporations making decisions rather than necessarily developers doing things in any different way. Lukas, let's move over to you. I've got a couple of questions for you actually. First of all, what does fair use mean to you in this sense? And secondly, you mentioned there was the potential that maybe you guys were doing something wrong and maybe infringing. Are you happier now because of the way this conversation has been going, or are you feeling worse?
Well, fair use is actually a point that I wanted to address anyway, in a different context actually, because I do believe that for us normal developers, this whole thing doesn't have almost any impact at all. Because the point is, what we have in most countries, I've written this down somewhere. I'm sorry about that. So okay, so what we have in most countries is something that's called common law or custom and practice, and we've been using APIs for ages. We've been using and integrating with languages, with platforms and everything for ages. This is not really a precedent for actually the contrary of the fair use of this API. It's really about this concrete case where Google infringed copyrights of this API from Oracle. It's not a general case. I think Bruno said this, and I think we've heard this as well from Michael. It's really about getting access to the developer market. It's about getting access to logic. In the end, it's about being lazy, as Hildeberto said. And in the end, I've prepared this little thing here. I don't know if you can see it. I found this on the web. Maybe you've seen it. This is all the litigations in the mobile market that are currently going on. You can't see all the details, I guess, but you see, you can search this on the web. You just look for mobile patent suits, and you will find that Apple is litigating with Motorola, Oracle is litigating with Google, and this is about patents. You can do the same thing with copyright and with trademarks probably as well. And what's interesting as well is all those companies that are using Java on their mobile phones, like Samsung, HTC, what we have here, Foxconn, Motorola, and all sorts of other companies. Oh yeah, you have it as well, huh? Okay. All sorts of other companies are using this technology, and Oracle wants their share from it. I mean, Oracle is maintaining a lot of Java, and Google simply didn't apply fair use in this case, according to the court's ruling. Now, your second question was about how we infringe potentially, and that was actually just meant to be a joke. There is something called Link. You're probably aware of it in the .NET universe. It's been created by Eric Meyer about 10 years ago, and it's really an awesome way to query databases, XML files, and all sorts of things. Our product is built very similarly as Link. It's an internal domain-specific language, a huge API to query a database. And people always compare it with Link, and we've also done a fair share of looking that when you Google Java and Link, then you find our website. So in essence, we're also taking advantage of popularity of something else that is comparable. It's not exactly the same, but it's comparable. So I'd say in our case, this is clearly fair use because it's just a general idea, and you can't even patent ideas in the European Union in software. So it's very hard to get the litigation in there. So to answer your question, I think this is really shouldn't be a case about fair use. It should be a case about the concrete problems that happened between Google and Oracle here, and that's also why I don't think any one of us normal folks will be infringing in this case.
Awesome, thanks, Lukas. So let's move back to Martijn. Martijn, do you think in the future this is going to be? I mean, looking at that picture that Lukas just showed with the number of infringements different mobile companies are having with each other, do you think this is going to stop at Oracle and Google, or do you think other corporations are now going to get involved, seeing this and seeing a competitive edge over each other?
If the ruling were to go ahead, then absolutely, right? Because it's just simply another angle, another method they have for dealing with conflict with each other, right? Because whether it be litigation over patents, over copyright, over trademarks, whatever you want to call it, it's just different ways that corporations kind of settle their differences. If you go back to Simon Phipps's article on this, he explains it very nicely. It's just the way they operate. So yeah, they'll be watching this very carefully, and if the ruling is upheld, then yes, you can definitely expect to see litigation happen across some of the larger corporations. I just don't think it's ever going to get to that day, personally.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Awesome, thank you. Let's move over back to Bruno. Bruno, you've been talking in RC about the similarities between Java and Wine, and the fact that Wine implements Windows APIs. So do you want to reiterate your answer in the session? The question was from AFLJ. Could this decision be considered dangerous for the Wine project, for example?
Yes. So everyone is kind of mentioned the Wine project in relation to this because Wine tries to do a similar thing. Because for those that don't know, Wine is basically a an implementation of the Windows API running on Linux, so you can actually get a Windows executable and just run on your Linux box, because Wine implements, re-implements the Windows API. So it's a pretty similar case, I think. So yeah, I think I would have to get more on the details. I don't know Wine that much, but basically I think it does have some similarities, and it may affect. What I think that from the ruling, one of the things that it specifically goes into great length is about the fair use of being interoperable, and the ruling on the Google versus Oracle case does talk about several other cases of interoperability. For example, when when someone implemented a runtime to run games for the Sony platform, for example. So there are some other cases like this, but in those other cases, basically you would re-implement the specification to allow all the programs to run. So there was a interoperability focus on this, and it seems that those other rulings were in favor of the interoperability case. And in this particular case of Google, is the court does say that the case for interoperability in Google is confusing, because in fact the re-implementation of the APIs in Android do not allow any Java application to actually run on Android unmodified, so it probably was not created to allow interoperability in that sense. So it may be that Wine is in a different infringement category, and so I'm not sure how much it would affect in fact, but.
Awesome. One of the other questions, sorry, I keep having to unmute myself and I forget, from Jugger. I think this is maybe a legal aspect of the question. Would art have any effect on the issue, ART? Michael?
Art. What is art? Let me see.
Yeah, this is why. So I'm not familiar with it. So
I think prior
art.
It was in capital, so I assumed it was illegal.
I mean, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think art's like obviously a copyright issue. I think what I did want to mention though is I think that there were some really interesting points about needing to implement like a whole virtual machine for Java, right? It's definitely different than on a server. I think that's a great point. But again, it's like, even if you want to do it, it's still, under this case anyway, it's still going to be a legal issue. But I think the most interesting points I just heard were, this goes back to like what everybody was afraid of with Oracle buying Sun, right? I mean, you've got, I think some of the other threads I was following on this raised the point that when Android first showed up and it was implementing Java, quote unquote implementing Java, right? Or at least it was using the Java language. Sun seemed very excited about it, right? I mean, whoever, I think it was either the CTO or CEO at the time, was very, very excited. And then when Oracle came, they're like this aggressive, they're an aggressive commercial competitor. They're not afraid of filing lawsuits, as we all know. So it does, I think it scares. I think there's definitely this kind of practical risk as to like what it does to the Java community, and I think like for people that are interested in other languages, it might just give them more reasons to go look for other languages and look for other things, just because Java is so hotly contested because of who owns it. And I think that there's always that fear, uncertainty, and doubt, not just from this litigation, but just from the fact that the steward of Java can sometimes they can be a fairly tough competitor.
Okay, awesome. So Jugger actually just joined RC again to inform us all of what art
here.
is.
Let's see.
So Arts, let me read this out. Art is a new Android runtime being introduced experimentally into the 4.4 release. It's a preview of work in progress in KitKat. Dalvec must remain the default runtime, or you risk breaking your Android implementations in third-party apps. So it's an equivalent. It's an equivalent to Java. So now I've just introduced that. Does anyone want to give an expert view?
I will say that if it like I'm obviously not going to give any legal opinion to these guys, but I mean to the extent that they're implementing the same exact API and let's say they're implementing the same exact Java Lang object and Java I/O and any of the other 37 packages, I would be concerned that it raises the exact same issues that it does that Google triggered, but I'd be interested in to see what the other developers think.
Bruno, do you want to take that one?
Well, I think that I'm not familiar with ART at all, but I think that if it does implement the same APIs, I think it will pretty much hit the same problems. I think that Google is in a situation right now that there's a whole lot of applications out there, and they need to keep running, right? So you're probably going to need to keep the API compatible. So I think that maybe an alternative would be to Google keep using the Java language and remove all the Java packages, all the 37 packages that the ruling is talking about, and then re-implement those packages as Google-specific APIs, because Google could have done that, right? Google could have created a set of packages. When you're talking, when Hildeberto was, for example, talking about, the index of the book, right? But we're talking about 7,000 method names, right? And 600 classes. So it's a lot of indexing, right? So I think that if Google decided to re-implement that and create new APIs, because there's a whole lot of, I think that in the ruling it says that Android has like 160 something APIs, and just 37 are those related to Java. So if Google replaced those 37 with something else, right, with another set of APIs, then it could probably continue using the Java language. It could probably continue using all the Java ecosystem, because maybe what you would need to do is the same thing you're doing now, is just add a jar to your IDE to be able to develop. But then what would happen is that all the existing codes that people are just reusing on Android, because although you can't run a full application, you can reuse a lot of libraries, for example, all the existing code would not run, and you would have to redevelop. And I think that's what probably Google is trying to not run into. But right now, maybe there's so many applications that it's very hard now for Google to back off and get all developers in the world to rewrite their existing applications. So I'm not sure how you could get out of that. One of the things that Michael said is that in terms of Google re-implementing some of the things, and actually, I'm sorry, I was going to quote Michael, but I don't remember exactly what he said, so I'm not going to quote him anymore. But I think that Google, there's other ways Google could do it that they decided not to do. And I think that going forward with a new runtime, I think. Okay. Now I remember what Michael said. I'm sorry. So with the new runtime, Google have all this back applications. But when Sun was negotiating, that's what Michael said. That's the discussion in the past. Sun was very excited, probably because Sun wanted to have a runtime that would run on Android that was compatible, right? And so at that point, Sun was actually negotiating with Google. And while you're negotiating, lots of things could happen. And at that point, I think Google could have backed it off because Android was too small. And but once the negotiations didn't go forward, then maybe, and after so many years, right? I think that the Android ecosystem grew a lot and makes it harder. So I think that the stakes are higher now. So I think that it probably made more sense for Oracle to go after this issue now than for Sun at the beginning of the time. And I'm not sure how the courts judge that, but from the discussion, it doesn't seem that Sun took a long time. It seems that Sun was trying to negotiate, and negotiations didn't go forward. And it doesn't seem that Oracle took that long either to decide to sue Google. So I'm not sure exactly what that means or how that plays. But I think that it would be very true to say that if Google implemented a compatible Java implementation, I think that all of us, and there's not just dispute going on, I think all of us Java developers will be excited to say that on Android it runs Java, right? And so, you know, I think that if this whole discussion ends up getting those two companies to sit down and agree and do some deal, I think that would be very positive for all of us. And that's not necessarily impossible. I think some of people said on the mailing list saying that's maybe that's an impossible discussion, but just last week, Google and Apple announced that they actually got an agreement and dropped the case that each one had against the other on the patent side. So I think that if the situation gets to a point where someone is going to lose a lot of money, I think they will sit down and get an agreement.
I have something to add.
Sure. Actually, what we're just gonna finish up. Is that Hildeberto?
I have something to add.
Sure.
Just to mention that I've been observing the development ecosystem and going to conference, multi-language conference like the vJUG, and I realized that the compatibility or the possibility of running code reusing Java libraries in another platform, like a mobile platform, is not an issue anymore. People are very motivated to rewrite native applications, so they actually do it for the iPhone devices, for Android, even Android and other technologies. They rewrite everything in JavaScript. They create native applications. So it's just to mention that the thing about reusing libraries and reusing is not a big advantage anymore. It's important. It saves time. But if Java keeps relying on these features, they will simply lose more and more users. One last thing is I'm afraid, I think at the beginning, I have an article that I read at the beginning. This article says that someone at Google said that if they try to follow the JCP process to go for a specification of a mobile platform, of a mobile technology, to be compatible with Android, to be fully compatible with, you know, all the discussions, specification, and legal concerns about contributions from the community and other companies. You know, it takes time. And I'm quite sure that someone from Google said it would be a bit slower to compete, to go for a full technology if they go through the JCP. So they couldn't compete with Apple because Apple was too fast. With iPhone, they were evolving too fast, many features. So Google was in a situation that we cannot wait. We cannot wait for a bureaucratic path. We cannot wait until we find a full specification and then finally implement it and then finally have a platform to run it. So I guess they were motivated. They were concerned about the time to market. So the time to market for the JCP is really a concern for me. So the time you start defining the JSRs, until you get it done, until you test it, until you put it in production, it's too long. So it's a concern for me because that was probably an opportunity we missed because the JCP it's too slow to get something done. So yes, Google would be nice to have Java running everywhere, including all Android devices. But seriously, we have to worry about time to market. For instance, Java Enterprise Edition was released in June 2013. We are about 1 year, and we have no production-ready server available. We have Whitefly, we have Glassfish, but nobody provides any support for them. So we have to wait more and more until someone finally provides support. So the time to market is really, really huge. So we have to be worried about that. We have to find a solution to move it faster.
Okay, awesome. That's really important points. Thanks, Vito. Before I hand up over to Martijn for a short close, I just wanted to pass over back to Bruno to comment on that. Can you hear us, Bruno?
Speak for. I'm sorry, I thought Martin was going to speak first. I'm sorry. So let me just quickly comment because I think that the JCP is an important thing for us to talk about. That Hildeberto made up good points. That Google maybe thought that things would be slow, and so it's important for us all to understand that this is a business decision, right? Once you decide to go really fast in a direction, for example, that is a business decision that you're taking. And Google took some risks in taking this business decision, and I think that's what we're going on the court right now. It's based on this risk that Google took, because there was other ways, right? If this is a business decision, Google could have made several other business decisions. They could have not used a Java. They could have implement everything from scratch like Apple and Microsoft did. They could have, for example, they could actually license the code from Sun at that point and just paid royalties for it. So I think it's important to understand that this is a business decision, and it is a business decision that Oracle doesn't agree with, and it does relate to Oracle's, to Oracle product and Oracle investments. So I think that this is an important point for us to understand that those are two business companies discussing and trying to discuss on the control, because Google has a very powerful ecosystem around the Android platform. It is an ecosystem that only that basically Google is the one that benefits from, because if you want to implement Android in a phone, you basically have to license.
Hey Bruno, can anyone hear Bruno anymore?
Yes, I dropped it for a minute, but I think I'm back. Can you hear me?
There we go, I can hear you now, Bruno. You're slightly broken.
Okay, can you hear me now? I complete drop off and come back.
That's it, perfect. I can hear you now. We only missed a few seconds.
So I'm not sure how much you heard or not, but so basically it is a business decision that those companies have to live with and agree with. And the last point is that the JCP is not the place where technology is created, right? I think there's dozens of different ways, there's hundreds of different ways to create technology that will eventually be standardized through the JCP. And the JCP is not the place to create technology. And Google could have done what they did in lots of different ways, without hurting compatibility. And I don't think that we have to we have to understand that at the moment they took that decision, they had a lot of different options, right? And so I think that this whole discussion, this whole legal discussion, it's based on the moment where Google took this decision and all the options they had at that moment, and they decided to choose that one, and they decided to go out, to run this risk. and I think that's, now we are all having to deal with, because in a way, this decision that they took is hurting us. I think we all agree that some of the things they did benefit us. We also agree that some of the things that they did hurt us in general, the Java community in general. And I would really prefer that those two companies would sit down and think of the benefits for the Java community and get to an agreement.
Okay, awesome. So we're going to actually take the last few words from our diabolical developer Martijn. Martijn, tell us straight then. What can we take away from this?
If you're a day-to-day Java developer, there is absolutely nothing to see here. Move along. If you're involved in writing some sort of a compatibility layer, especially a compatibility layer with an API, then you probably want to continue watching the court case with interest. But quite seriously, nothing is going to be set in concrete for many years to come, and I suspect the decisions and the nuances will have changed since then. So, although this is an interesting, panel debate, and I'm sure there's lots of interesting discussions happening around the internet, the reality is there's nothing concrete coming out. It's a little bit like the famous startups who always have an idea but never actually go away and implement something. So there's time to go.
Awesome, thank you very much. And I'd like just to take a moment to say thank you very much to our panelists, to Bruno, to Hildeberto, Lukas, Martijn, and Michael. Your input was very much valued. And if I just share a screen, while your input is very much valued, no one should take any of it for granted, and no one should take any of it as read. None of us are giving legal advice here, so pretty much the last hour and a half, please forget and don't use. But no, seriously, this is all. If you do need legal advice on this, then you should seek a competent legal authority and base your decisions on their advice. So thank you to our panel again. One last thing I'd just like to close up with is thank you very much for attending. I really value your feedback on certainly on how the new site went. For those of you who used the new site, please either over email or Twitter give me some feedback on that, how we can improve that. Any feedback on the session, please feel free to add on the Meetup site. Next up is a class loader session, which was requested by the group. So we're actually going to go to zero turnaround for this because one of our products heavily uses class loaders. So Thomas Romer, one of the founders, is going to give a session on that. And just before I go, the last thing I wanted to talk about is another group called the JBug Worldwide Group, and this is actually quite a similar group to the virtual JUG, but very specific around the JBoss technologies and the JBoss middleware. So if you are JBoss fans or considering to switch to JBoss, then this is the group for you guys to join. I'm going to copy this URL right now, and I'm going to pop that directly in the IRC, so you've got that as well. And yeah, that's all for now. So let me just unshare my screen so you can see me. So yeah, that's all for now. Thanks very much for joining, and thanks again to the panel, and see you on the next vJUG.